We are now entering week 3 of official online learning. With that said, your homework tonight, if you have the Eureka book, is Module 4, Lesson 11. If not, make sure you are knocking out an additional 30 minutes of Imagine Math. As it was for the first 2 weeks, please check your tracker. Make sure you're checking both tabs to make sure you're completing the correct classwork and homework assignments. Today, to begin week 3, we're going to look at taxes, commissions, and fees. Just a reminder here of office hours. The links are posted inside Google Classroom. I have office hours Tuesday and Thursday, as does Mr. Cardarella for math. In terms of Miss Smiles, that support is Monday and Wednesday. You can see the red circles indicating when math help is available. So today you guys are going to solve real-world problems involving taxes, commissions, and fees. You know you have this when you are able to correctly calculate and understand progressive tax on today's Google Doc assignment, and we are still working on Standard 7 RPA3. So we're going to start as we always have with this quick review. So I want you to pause the video, write this question down, solve it, and then check the video when you are done. So there are a few approaches to solve this question here. One thing we can do is our part equals percent times whole. In this case, our part is 17. We do not know our percent, and our whole is 20, because that's the total amount of questions. We can divide both sides by 20 to undo the multiplication on that side, and 17 divided by 20 ends up getting 85 hundredths, and that as a percent is 85%. Another way to look at it is if you have 17 out of 20, percents, your goal is just to get to 100. So if I'm, that was a really crooked, we try that again. So if we have 17 out of 20, right? Our goal with a percent, as I just said before I messed up that line, is to get to 100 in our denominator specifically. So this is times 5. So up here, you could have just multiplied 17 times 5, and that would have gotten the 85. So because you have a numerator over 100, your percent is this 85 right here. Now, if you're looking at it as a bar diagram, and if you have not used the bar diagrams yet, and you're still struggling, I suggest you use these. In a bar diagram, we're going to put our percents at the top. Now, 100% represents the total, and that total is 20. Now, he got 17 right, which is like more than half, because 10 would be half. It's closer to being almost towards 100%. So we got 17 correctly. What percent is that? So this sets up our proportion for us. So we can cross multiply, and then we would end up dividing by this 20, which would get us 85. So I've showed you very quickly 3 different ways. At this point, you should be very comfortable with percents, and hopefully you blew through this problem fairly quickly with one of these strategies, or there's more strategies too. For today's lesson, we have some important vocabulary. I want you guys to make sure you write this down. We're dealing with gratuity, commission, and taxes. Gratuity is simply another word for tip. So those are synonyms. Usually a gratuity ranges somewhere between 5 and 20%. Nowadays, 20% at restaurants is kind of the norm, and you go up and down from that based on how good your waiter or waitress does. Commission, we've already dealt with that in class, but it's basically a percentage of the amount of something you sell, and you get that added onto your paycheck. You get paid for making sales, basically. That's called commission. Taxes, there's a bunch of form of taxes, such as sales tax. Just so you know, public schools are tax exempt, meaning they don't have to pay taxes. But those are 3 important vocabulary terms you'll need today. So I pause this and make sure this is down inside your notebook. Now, we are going to go through this example. I want you to pause. It is a lot. So pause and write this down, and we're going to go through this first. I know that was a lot to write down, but luckily it's a video. You could pause it and work at your own pace here. Basically, this situation, Sam is trying to find out which job he should be taking. What he knows is the electronics store pays him to work. We got 15 hours per week. And he is going to make $8 per hour. So we're going to have to calculate how much that is in a second. And then 2% commission. All right. At the school's bus garage, Sam would earn $300 per week working 15 hours. So this one already tells you he would get $300, okay, for 15 hours. What's really nice about this problem that helps us out is the hour amounts are equivalent. So we have to do less conversion than we would have to otherwise. Now, how much in electronics would Sam have to sell for the job at the electronics store to be better? Okay? Now, what's unique about commission jobs is you have the chance, depending on what industry you work in, to make a ton of money, because unless there is kind of a low commissions cap, meaning at some point they stop paying you, your additional money comes down to your ability to sell items. So if you're a very good salesman or saleswoman, you can actually make a lot of money in commission-based jobs, but you have to be good at your job or else you struggle financially because you're not making much on commission. So commission jobs are very unique. But we know that the bus garage is paying $300 for 15 hours, okay? Now, the electronics is paying $8 times 15. So 8 times 15 is 120. So it is paying $120 for 15 hours. So what we have is a difference of $180. Currently, he makes, without commission, $180 less at the electronics store than the bus garage. But the question's asking how many hours does he need to work in order, or how many sales does he need to make, or how much money in sales, more importantly, because you may make 5,000 sales. If you're making sales on things that are $1, you're not making much commission. It's better to sell one item that's expensive than a bunch of items that are cheap. You want to just sell the most amount of money, okay, with a commission job. Let's look here. We have our part equals percent times whole. And I will also show this using a bar diagram. Now, in this case, our part is 180, okay? We want our end commission amount to end up equaling $180 to make up the difference here. Our percent is 2%, 2% commission, and we do not know our whole, and I'm actually going to use a W here. The whole in this case represents the amount of sales. What this is essentially saying is when you take 2% of the amount of sales you make, you should get $180 in commission. So I'm going to divide this by 2/10 on both sides. That will eliminate the coefficient of 2/10 in front of the W. And what we end up here with is 9,000 equals W. What does that mean? In order for Sam to make the same amount at the electronics store as the bus garage, he has to sell $9,000 worth of electronics. Now, if he sells more than that, he'll make more money at the electronics store. But on the flip side, if he sells less than $9,000 per week, he will earn less at the electronics store. So once again, this commission comes down to how well he can sell product. If he feels confident, he should go with the commission job. If he's unconfident, then he should probably go for the bus garage job. Okay? Now, in terms of a bar diagram, let me extend the page. What this would look like, okay, we have this. I'm going to label 100% over here. Now, the 100% in this case, the amount of total sales he needs to make, we do not know. Okay? But, so I'm just going to put an X down here. We don't know how much he needs to sell. What we do know is all the way down here, draw it here, he gets 2%. So this is the amount of money he takes home out of the entire price of his sales. And we know that amount needs to be 180 in order to match the garage. So we have our proportion here. It's kind of spread out. But we basically have 2 over 180 equals 100 over X. Now, you would cross multiply the 180 times 100 and then divide by 2, and you'll end up here still getting the answer of X equaling 9,000. Another way, by the way, to set up this proportion could have been, you could write your percents, right? 2%, which is 2 out of 100. And then you could write it like this. And you could solve it this way. Either way, you would end up at 9,000, so he needs to sell 9,000 to break even. But if he wants to make more at the electronics store, he needs to sell more than 9,000. All right, we're going to look at another example, so pause the video and write this down now. Now we're going to look at a problem dealing with fees. We're going to go through this one a little bit quicker because it's not as complex as the previous question. And whether it's fees, commission, or taxes, which we'll get to next, it's still asking you to use your percent skills. So these are, once again, like it's been kind of over and over again, last week, the first week, and this week. I'm not asking you to do new problems. I'm asking you to apply your same skill to different scenarios. So you're not learning anything new. You're just getting new real-world situations. So Wanda's school here charges a fee of 75% of the cost of the book if you lose this book. Now, Wanda's notice said she owed the school $60. So what that means is 70% of the book was $60. How much did she pay? All right, I'm going to solve this 2 ways using the bar diagram and our formula. So part equals percent times whole. By the way, as I said over and over again, I don't care which strategy you use. Pick one, be confident, roll with it. Now, in this case, the $60 is our part. We know we have 75% and we don't know the whole. The whole in this case is how much does the book cost in total actually? Like how much did the school pay for it? We know that Wanda ended up getting charged $60, and the $60 represents 75% of whatever in the world the school bought it for. So I'm going to divide both sides by the 75% as a decimal in order to isolate W. And when you divide this, you can still rely on a calculator for now because I'm not testing your ability to do the calculations. But this gets W is 80. So the school paid $80 for the science book. All right, which makes sense, right? The school pays more based on this scenario and charges less. I couldn't imagine a school charging more than they paid for it if a student lost a book. That seems a little corrupt to me, so that makes sense here. Now, bar diagram, for those of us who would prefer that method. I'm going to start with my 100%. I'm actually this time going to write the 100% on the bottom because it doesn't matter here. Now, what we don't know is we don't know the 100%. We don't know how much the school paid for the book. We don't know the starting amount. What we know is they charge 75% if the book is lost. So this part I'm like shading in right now. Or let's try that again. This part right here. It's a great shade in job, right, guys? This part right here represents how much you have to pay if you lose the book. Okay? And this part the remaining white part here, this 25%, basically the school just eats that amount if you lose it. And we know 75% here is she had to pay $60. So you have your proportion now set up, and you can cross multiply 60 times 100 and divide by 75, and you'll get your answer of 80. When you use this proportion, I got a question which was good during office hours. Do you change the percents to a decimal using these proportions? No. If you use these proportions, this denominator is 75 and this is 100. It's not 0.75 and this is not 1. You just keep it as percents. If you use the formula, your percent needs to go in as a decimal. So just wanted to make that note before we move to the next example. What you guys are going to be dealing with today ultimately in your Google Doc is something called progressive tax. What I did is from last time or last week, your Google Doc, which dealt with flat tax, I basically copied, I'm going to copy your guys' work over into the doc, and you're going to just build on to part 2. If you did not do part 1, now part 1 will be in there blank, and you need to go back and you need to fill in the necessary information for part 2. It's going to ultimately lead into part 3, where you guys are going to ultimately decide is progressive tax or flat tax better in your opinion. But instead of me explaining progressive tax, I'm going to allow you guys to watch this video, which I'll open in a second, so you can hear a different voice explaining what progressive tax is.
A progressive tax is a levy in a tax system where the tax rate increases as the taxable base increases. The United States income tax is a progressive tax system. In 2015, individual taxpayers with taxable income of $37,450 are taxed at a rate of 15%, whereas individual taxpayers with taxable income over $413,201 are taxed at a 39.6% rate. Between those two extremes, there are 4 more tax rates at bracketed income levels. As a taxpayer's taxable income increases, he is said to climb the brackets to higher income tax rates. Progressive tax schemes are not limited to income tax. Sales taxes on luxury items and sales tax exemptions for necessities are also examples of progressive tax schemes. Some argue that a progressive tax system is fairer than a flat tax or regressive tax scheme. Proponents say that as an individual's income increases, he can afford to pay more taxes, and those taxes are redistributed in social programs that help those individuals that do not earn as much. Others argue that a progressive tax is discriminatory and punishes achievement and success because it taxes higher earners. They argue that a flat tax is fair and provides a greater incentive for low earners to increase their earnings through education, hard work, and entrepreneurship.
To summarize the video as simplistic as possible, because taxes are actually very complicated, but the basic idea of a progressive tax system is people who make more money pay more in taxes because they have the more ability to do so. Whereas people who make less money pay a less percent in taxes. That's different than last week with flat tax, because in flat tax, everyone said it pays maybe, 20% no matter how much they make, okay? So that's the difference between progressive tax and flat tax. Your guys' key points for today. Taxes, commissions, and fees can all be calculated in similar ways. I said it earlier in the video. I'm not asking you guys to learn new skills. I'm asking you to apply the same things you know to more problems. Progressive tax states that people who earn more money pay more in taxes, whereas flat tax states that everyone is taxed at the same percentage. As you guys are working through your Google Doc today, please just read through and think through carefully and make sure you are providing correct answers and then well-informed reflections when you get to that point. Today's goal, you guys are going to complete the Google Doc. It is titled Tax Rate Financial Literacy Part 2. Your work from Part 1 has been added to today's work. What does that mean? If you did work last week, I gave you feedback. Hopefully you implemented it. And then have the chance to copy and paste. I already copied and pasted it for you over. If you did not do Part 1 last week, you now have the opportunity to do Part 1 and Part 2. You're going to need the previous parts to complete the assignments down the road. Okay? Please do not forget to click the turn in button when you're done. It's very hard for me to track and go through almost 100 pieces of work if I know basically it's not done. I'm going to have to search, but if you click the turn in button, I know it's done. So please click the turn in button when you're done. You can use a calculator, and as always, reach out for support as needed. Just to be clear, this is what the document looks like that you'll be working on today. You're going to have an individual taxpayer section. You're going to have a married joint file taxpayer section, and then you are going to have a reflection section at the end. Basically, all you need to do is find how much tax you would pay given you made this much money. Okay, I did the first one for you. The final answer is written here in red. So what you see is I just took this amount and multiplied it by 10% as a decimal and got my answer. Whatever strategy you want to use is fine. Just make sure your work is clear and in colored font. And then last thing, just a reminder of the office hour schedule. Please, if you are struggling, it is your responsibility to reach out. Either come to office hours or reach out through phone, text, or email. With that said, good luck on this assignment. Hopefully you guys, I'm not going to hope, I know you guys will knock it out of the ballpark.